Let's continue our discussion of Sharot and Sunstein's book, Look Again. Boiling frog is a widely circulated but very modern anecdote. The fable originated from an 1869 experiment by a German physiologist. It suggests that, if you put a frog in boiling water, it will immediately jump out and survive. But if you put the frog in lukewarm water and gradually heat it, the frog will get used to the temperature and won't take action, eventually dying when the water becomes too hot. Many people have experimented with the boiling frog theory. Some say that, even with slow heating, the frog will eventually jump out. Others claim the frog won't, leaving the conclusion uncertain. Regardless of the frog's fate, such boiling frog scenarios are common in human society. When I, a northerner, went to college in the South, I found the winters unbearably cold. The school's heating was terrible. When winter break finally came, I returned to the warm indoors of my home. Seeing my frostbitten fingers and toes, my grandmother cried with sympathy. What surprised me most was that, my classmates from the South never complained about the cold. They wore thin clothes and seemed unaffected. One guy deliberately showed off by taking cold showers every day. They looked at me with a mix of pity and curiosity about my sensitivity to the cold. In reality, people can adapt to harsh environments both mentally and physically. The book discusses an experiment conducted by the U.S. military in the 1960s. Soldiers were placed in a cold water pool maintained at 11.8 degrees Celsius 53.2 degrees Fahrenheit for 8 hours a day, for 31 days. Initially, the soldiers shivered intensely, but as the experiment continued, their shivering decreased, and they gradually adapted. Of course, you can't push it too far. The point is, within certain limits, people can adapt to very harsh environments. Eventually, I also got used to southern winters, and with my mom's thick quilt, I never had frostbite again. Some Americans live near pig farms. They hear pigs squealing and smell the unpleasant odors every day, but they get used to it. But if these people move near an airport, they find the noise unbearable. In the UK, 88% of areas exceed legal air pollution levels. Foreigners might find it hard to tolerate, but surveys show that only 10% of Britons think their air quality is poor. This partly explains the resistance to environmental movements. Environmentalists are often seen by locals as fussy or even disruptive. People can also adapt to harsh social environments. You may have read this confession poem, written by German pastor Martin Niemöller after World War II. First they came for the communists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. This poem suggests that the German people's selfishness and apathy allowed the Nazis to thrive. However, it doesn't precisely describe the situation at the time. Journalists who interviewed ordinary Germans during the Nazi period found that many, including Jews, did not initially see the Nazis as evil. Some even considered the pre-war years under Hitler as the best of their lives. If Hitler had started with mass killings of Jews, the German public might have revolted. But whether intentionally or not, Hitler used a boiling frog strategy. In April 1933, the German government urged citizens to boycott Jewish stores and businesses. People didn't see it as a big deal since there was already anti-Semitic sentiment in society. Even Jews felt merely offended. Soon after, Jews were banned from being lawyers and journalists. A few months later, the government authorized doctors to perform involuntary sterilizations on Jews. Even then, most Jews didn't think about fleeing Germany. By 1939, Hitler authorized the involuntary euthanasia of people with mental and physical disabilities. Finally came the systematic genocide of the Jews. Each step was small, and people gradually adapted, leading society step by step into the abyss. I suspect Hitler didn't initially plan the Holocaust but was encouraged by the public's habituation to each escalation. One could argue that the deterioration of social environments is a result of mutual facilitation between politicians and the public. We've discussed how politicians and public figures lie more frequently. Here, we'll discuss how the public has become accustomed to these lies. In 2004, 44% of Americans believed exaggerating facts was acceptable to make a story more interesting. By 2018, that percentage had risen to 66%. This is the so-called post-truth era. Beyond lying, Sharot and Sunstein analyze another mechanism behind the spread of misinformation: repetition. In the Chinese-speaking world, there's a saying, "A lie told 1,000 times becomes the truth," often attributed to Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels. However, Goebbels never said this, and this phrase isn't found in English or German sources. We know that a lie like "the sun rises in the west" won't become true no matter how many times it's repeated. Yet, there is a psychological mechanism that makes people believe repeated information. This mechanism is called the illusory truth effect. For example, suppose you see an online claim that most prisoners in the US are immigrants. Many people share it on social media, but later someone debunks it, stating the truth that most prisoners in the US are not immigrants. If you're not deeply interested in the issue, which will you remember after some time? The fact or the rumor? You're more likely to remember the rumor. You'll retain the keywords, prisoners, and immigrants. Your brain will habituate to this information, making it easier to accept, even if you only vaguely recall a debate about whether most prisoners in the US are immigrants. Next time you hear, "most prisoners in the US are immigrants," it will feel familiar, and this familiarity will make it seem true. Due to the illusory truth effect, efforts to debunk rumors can sometimes reinforce them. Scholars suggest that, when debunking, you should only state the truth without repeating the rumor. For example, to counter, "most prisoners in the US are immigrants," you have two options. 1. Only 9% of prisoners in the US are immigrants. 2. 91% of prisoners in the US are native-born. You should choose the second option and avoid mentioning immigrants. This approach is similar to the positive affirmations or the law of attraction people believe in. If you want to give yourself a positive mental boost or send out frequencies for the universe to realize your dreams, you must use positive words. Instead of saying, "I hope I'm less angry," say, "I hope I stay calm." Repetition does have a psychological impact. Not just repetition. Using large fonts or bright red colors can have similar effects. Research shows that the illusory truth effect misleads not just people with low IQ but also those with high IQ. It affects not only cognitive closure individuals who need clear answers but also those who are cognitively open. The only exception is Alzheimer's patients. They aren't influenced by repetition because they can't remember it no matter how many times they hear it. Given such strong habituation effects, is the deterioration of the environment and society inevitable? Don't worry too much, habituation is a trend, and not habituating is also a trend. Some people will eventually speak out when the water gets too hot. We'll discuss the benefits of dehabituation later, but for now, let's emphasize that just because something is habitual doesn't make it right. Studies repeatedly show that disabled people, like those who've lost fingers or a leg, report happiness levels similar to able-bodied individuals. They don't constantly complain about their disability. They think about everyday issues just like everyone else. Even those with colostomies or undergoing weekly dialysis report high levels of happiness most of the time. They've adapted. But as Lu Sun said, just because it's always been this way, does that make it right? Patients may adapt, but they know what a better life looks like. Surveys indicate that patients with colostomies and those undergoing dialysis would rather shorten their lives by 15% in exchange for a normal life. Bad is still bad, even if you get used to it. We cannot judge an environment solely based on people's tolerance. Whether you adapt or not, air pollution increases disease risk. Those pollution indicators and scientific conclusions matter. Modern society cannot run on feelings alone. That's today's content. In the next part, we'll discuss the benefits of dehabituation.
If you feel there is value in this, please like, subscribe to this channel, and leave your thoughts or suggestions in the comments section. Let's grow together and read more good books.